I've worked with seniors for decades. I've managed millions of dollars, sat across from families with more savings than they thought they'd ever spend, and I've also had heartbreaking conversations with retirees who realized far too late that their nest egg was evaporating. And do you know what shocks me most? It's not the market crashes. It's not even the scams or the fraudulent schemes that prey on older adults. No, what really drains the financial security of seniors, quietly and consistently, is something far more ordinary. Something they buy every single day. This is what I call the invisible leak. It's the kind of expense that doesn't feel dangerous. It doesn't trigger alarm bells. In fact, many seniors defend it as a little treat, or something they've earned after a lifetime of hard work. And yet, when I run the numbers, and believe me, I've run these numbers more times than I can count, that little daily habit adds up to tens of thousands of dollars lost over the course of retirement. Tens of thousands. Money that could have extended their independence, funded healthcare, paid for family trips, or even just given them peace of mind in their later years. Here's the pattern I've noticed. Seniors often underestimate the compounding effect of daily expenses because they think in short bursts. A coffee here. A lottery ticket there. A fast food meal because cooking feels exhausting. $5, maybe $10 at a time. Harmless, right? But when you stretch that across 20 years of retirement, suddenly you're staring at a six-figure drain on a portfolio that may only have been comfortable, not abundant, to begin with. And the reason it's so devastating is because retirees don't have the same luxury of time to recover from mistakes as younger earners do. If a 30-year-old spends too much on lattes, they have decades to correct course, to earn more, to invest smarter. A 70-year-old, they're drawing down assets already, living on fixed income, and sometimes facing rising medical costs. Which means every little daily purchase is essentially magnified. It eats away at principal that can't be replenished. I can't tell you how many times I've sat with a client who told me, but it's only a few bucks. I'm not taking vacations or buying fancy cars. I just want my small comforts. And I get it, I really do. Retirement isn't meant to feel like punishment. But here's the truth no one likes to hear. It's rarely the big, flashy purchases that bankrupt seniors. It's the accumulation of tiny, repeated ones. The ones that slip under the radar. The ones no advisor can track unless the senior is brutally honest about their spending habits. What makes this even more insidious is that many of these purchases have become habitual. They're not thoughtful decisions anymore. They're automatic. Which means they don't even register as spending in the senior's mind. And habits, especially long-standing habits, are incredibly difficult to break. But if they aren't addressed, they can sabotage even the best-laid financial plans. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly is this daily purchase I'm talking about? What is so destructive, so financially toxic, that it can undo years of careful saving and planning? Well, before I tell you, I want you to picture this. You're retired, living on Social Security and maybe a modest pension. Your investments are stable, but they're not growing like they used to. You tell yourself you're careful with money. You don't splurge, you don't take expensive trips, you're not buying new cars. And yet, 20 years later, your account is dangerously low. You're stressed. You're scared. You're asking your kids for help. That is the reality I want to prevent. That's why I'm making this video. Because this daily purchase is not just a few dollars. It's the difference between financial freedom and financial anxiety. It's the difference between seniors thriving in retirement or barely surviving. And the story I'm about to share will make it crystal clear just how dangerous this habit is, and why, as a wealth advisor, I am absolutely shocked at how common it is. I remember one client in particular. Let's call her Margaret. Margaret was 72 when she first sat down with me. She had worked as a teacher for more than 3 decades, raised 2 kids, and managed to save a decent amount of money. Not millions, but enough to retire comfortably, assuming she stayed disciplined. She had a small pension, Social Security, and a portfolio of about $400,000 when she left work. Nothing extravagant, but certainly workable. She was kind, sharp, and proud of her independence. When we went over her spending, I noticed something odd. The big items were fine. Her mortgage was paid off. She drove a reliable, modest car. She didn't have credit card debt. She wasn't going on cruises or splurging on luxury purchases. But month after month, the numbers didn't add up. Her withdrawal rate from her retirement accounts was higher than necessary. Not dramatically higher, but just enough to catch my attention. So I asked her, "Margaret, walk me through your daily spending. From the moment you get up, what do you spend money on?" She laughed and told me, "Oh, nothing really. Just a cup of coffee at the cafe down the street, maybe a muffin, sometimes lunch if I'm out. But I'm not wasting money on silly things. I don't shop much. I don't need new clothes." I pressed a little more. "How often do you go for coffee?" She thought about it. "Every day, I guess. Sometimes twice." She didn't see it as a problem. After all, what's a few dollars here and there? This is where the math becomes brutal. I pulled out my calculator and showed her, "Okay, Margaret, let's say you spend $6 a day between coffee and a snack. That's $180 a month. Over a year, that's about $2,200. Over 20 years, that's $44,000. And that's without considering inflation. That's a brand new car. That's 2 years of assisted living expenses. That's the difference between stretching your retirement comfortably and running short." Her face fell. "I never thought about it that way," she whispered. And I believed her. Because almost no one does. These daily habits feel harmless until you zoom out. And when you're in retirement, you don't have decades of income left to refill what's been drained. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying seniors can never enjoy a coffee out or a meal with friends. Life is meant to be lived. But here's the dangerous pattern. When it's automatic, when it's every day without thought, when it's treated as a fixed expense instead of a conscious choice, that's when it starts quietly bankrupting people. And it's not just coffee. For some seniors, it's lottery tickets. Just a couple bucks a day. Who knows? Maybe I'll get lucky. I've seen retirees sink thousands into scratch-offs, hoping for a jackpot that never comes. I had one client who, over 15 years, spent nearly $60,000 on lottery tickets. That's more than his car, more than the down payment he once made on his house. And he didn't even realize it until I laid out the numbers in front of him. For others, it's takeout meals. Cooking for one is too much trouble, they tell me. And I understand. Cooking can be tiring, especially as health issues make it harder. But when a person is spending $15 to $20 a day on fast food or takeout, it adds up to $500 or $600 a month. Over the course of retirement, that's 6 figures gone. 6 figures. Just for convenience. These are the purchases that slowly erode financial stability. They're disguised as small indulgences. They don't set off alarms the way a new car or a vacation would. And that's exactly why they're so dangerous. They slip under the radar. Here's another reason this is so destructive. Many seniors underestimate how long retirement will last. They plan for 10, maybe 15 years. But with modern medicine, many live 20, 25, even 30 years in retirement. That's 3 decades of spending. So when you take a $5 daily habit and multiply it across 30 years, the numbers are staggering. And unlike someone who's working, retirees don't get raises. Their income doesn't grow to absorb these costs. Which means the math only gets tighter as inflation makes everything else more expensive. This is what I try to make my clients see. It's not about depriving yourself of small joys. It's about being intentional. If you want to spend $40 a week at your favorite cafe, great, plan for it. Make room in your budget. Balance it with savings in other areas. But don't fool yourself into thinking it's insignificant. Because over time, it is anything but insignificant. The tragic part is, many seniors only realize this when it's too late. When the portfolio balance starts dropping faster than expected. When medical bills arrive. When they can't afford the care they need or the home they want. And then they look back and wonder where all the money went. I've seen tears, I've seen anger, I've seen denial. But at the root of it all, it often comes back to those invisible leaks. So when I say I'm shocked, I mean it. Not because I don't understand the temptation, believe me, I do, but because I've seen the devastation it causes over and over again. It's the same story, repeated in hundreds of different lives. The faces change, the details shift, but the outcome is eerily consistent. Retirement becomes tighter, more stressful, less free. And all because of what seemed like just a few dollars. That's why I tell every senior I meet, track it. Be honest with yourself. Look at the daily habits that feel too small to matter, and ask, if I keep doing this for the next 20 years, what will it really cost me? Because until you face that number, you're blind to the truth. And the truth is, daily purchases, coffee, lottery tickets, takeout meals, are not just habits. They're wealth killers in disguise. There's one moment that always stays with me, because it revealed not just the financial cost of these daily purchases, but the emotional toll they eventually take. A client named Robert came into my office with his daughter. He was 79, a widower, and he had been living on a combination of Social Security, a small pension from his years at the utility company, and the savings he'd built up over time. When we sat down, his daughter did most of the talking. She was worried. "Dad's money is disappearing faster than it should," she said. "He promised Mom he'd be okay, but I don't see how he can keep this up for much longer." Robert just looked down at the floor, avoiding my eyes. I opened his account statements. The balances told a story I've seen too many times. Withdrawals that exceeded safe limits, dwindling reserves, and no emergency cushion left. His investment accounts, which should have lasted at least another decade, were being drained 2 and 3 times faster than they should have been. And there hadn't been any major medical events, no house repairs, no family emergencies to explain it. Just steady, relentless withdrawals. I asked Robert gently, "What does your day look like? Walk me through a normal day, especially what you spend." He hesitated. His daughter pressed him. Finally, he admitted it. Every morning, he walked down to the corner convenience store. He'd buy a coffee, sometimes a pastry, and always 2 or 3 lottery tickets. It was his ritual, something he'd been doing since his 40s. At first, back when he was working, it was harmless. But after retirement, the habit continued. He never stopped to think about how much it was costing him now that he wasn't earning a paycheck. We did the math together. The tickets were $5 to $10 a day, sometimes more when jackpots were high. Over a month, that was $300. Over a year, $3,600. Over the 15 years since he retired, he had spent close to $55,000, without even realizing it. And that didn't include the coffee and snacks. The saddest part? He hadn't won more than $500 in all those years. When I laid it out for him, his daughter's eyes filled with tears. She said, "Dad, that money could have paid for in-home help. It could have made things easier for you." And Robert finally looked at me, ashamed. He whispered, "It was just a little fun. It made me feel like I had a chance at something." That's the emotional side of this daily drain. For many seniors, these habits aren't about the money. They're about comfort, routine, and even hope. The coffee shop is a place to see familiar faces, a lottery ticket is a spark of possibility, a takeout meal is relief from loneliness in the kitchen. These purchases meet emotional needs, but the financial trade-off is invisible, until it's too late. And here's the part that hurts the most. When the money finally runs low, seniors are forced into a position they dread, depending on others. For Robert, that meant leaning on his daughter. She started paying some of his bills. She worried about whether he'd be able to stay in his home. She had a family of her own, and the stress began to bleed into her marriage. Suddenly, what felt like just a few dollars a day became a source of guilt, shame, and family conflict. I've seen this story play out in countless variations. A woman who loved her daily lunches out with friends, only to find herself moving in with her son because her savings dried up. A man who spent every afternoon at the local diner, leaving his daughter to cover his prescription costs when his retirement account was gone. Seniors who never thought their children would have to step in financially, but who underestimated how much those daily leaks were draining. It's never just about money. It's about independence. It's about dignity. Seniors work their entire lives to earn the freedom of retirement, only to watch it slip away because of small, unnoticed habits. And by the time the consequences are obvious, changing course is incredibly difficult. Habits are ingrained, fixed incomes are tight, and there's little time left to rebuild savings. This is why I tell every senior who will listen, the danger of daily purchases isn't just the arithmetic. It's the way they quietly trade away future freedom for present comfort. They sacrifice tomorrow's security for today's convenience. And while that trade-off might feel worth it in the moment, the long-term cost is devastating. The emotional fallout also has a ripple effect. Children and grandchildren see their loved one struggling. They worry, they argue, they rearrange their own lives to provide help. It creates resentment and stress in families that were once close. And all of it could have been avoided if the small, daily habits had been addressed earlier. I've learned that when I talk about this subject, people sometimes get defensive. They say, "It's my money, I can spend it how I want." And that's true, up to a point. But what many don't realize is that once the money runs out, the burden doesn't disappear. It shifts. It shifts onto children, onto siblings, onto the government. Choices that feel independent in the short term can end up robbing you of independence in the long term. Robert's story ended better than some. With his daughter's help, we built a strict budget. He cut back on the tickets, limited himself to a weekly treat instead of a daily habit, and adjusted his withdrawals. He still faced a leaner retirement than he should have, but at least he wasn't in crisis anymore. But not everyone is so lucky. Some don't have family to step in. Some don't have enough left to restructure. And for them, the consequences are harsher. Selling homes, moving into facilities earlier than planned, or living with constant financial anxiety. This is the true cost of those invisible leaks. They don't just drain bank accounts. They drain confidence, dignity, and peace of mind. And yet, I'll tell you the part that still amazes me. Most seniors, even after hearing these stories, still underestimate the danger. They think, "It won't happen to me. My little habit is harmless." That's the same line I've heard 100 times, and every time, the math proves otherwise. So when I say I'm shocked, it's not just at the numbers, it's at the refusal to believe that something so small can grow into something so destructive. That disbelief is the very thing that ensures the cycle continues. Let's pull back the curtain on the math, because once you see it in black and white, it's impossible to ignore. Numbers don't lie, and they tell a story of how daily habits, tiny, ordinary, almost invisible, snowball into financial disasters for seniors who can't afford mistakes in retirement. Take the classic example of the morning coffee and pastry. Let's assume it costs $7. Some days it might be $5, others $9, but $7 is a fair average. Seniors often tell me, $7 isn't much. I deserve this. And on a single day, they're right. $7 doesn't destroy anyone's future. But here's where the trap springs. Multiply it. $7 a day equals $49 a week. That's $210 a month. By the end of 1 year, $2,555 is gone. Now, that still doesn't sound terrifying, but remember, we're talking about retirement, which often spans 20 years or more. Across 20 years, without even adding inflation, that's over $51,000. And if we adjust for inflation, it's closer to $70,000. All from coffee and a pastry. Now let's talk about something more common, takeout meals. Cooking gets tiring. Grocery trips feel harder. Many seniors justify fast food or delivery as simpler. The average takeout meal is $15. 4 couples, it's $30. If one person orders just 4 times a week, that's $60 a week. A couple doing the same spends $120. Across a month, that's nearly $500. Across a year, $6,000. Across 20 years, $120,000. And that's without inflation, which is hitting food harder than almost any other category. Lottery tickets are another culprit. Even 2 $5 scratch-offs a day means $10 daily. That's $300 a month, $3,600 a year, $72,000 across 20 years. And unlike coffee or food, you don't even get guaranteed enjoyment, just a slip of paper and the hope of a jackpot that almost never arrives. The math is merciless. Now, here's where seniors often push back. They say, "Well, I won't live another 20 years. But the truth is, many do. Life expectancy for someone who reaches 65 is now well into the 80s, and plenty live into their 90s. If you plan for only 10 years and live 25, the financial strain is devastating. That extra decade and a half magnifies every dollar spent. And here's the kicker most forget. It's not just about what you spend, it's about what you lose by not investing that money. Let's go back to Margaret's $7 daily coffee. If she had invested that $210 a month instead, earning even a modest 5% annual return, after 20 years she wouldn't just have the $51,000 she didn't spend, she'd have nearly $85,000. That's the true cost. Not just the dollars spent, but the growth forfeited. That's why I call these purchases wealth killers in disguise. They rob you twice, once when you spend the money, and again when you lose the opportunity to let it grow. In retirement, when income is fixed, that double loss is deadly. Let me illustrate with a scenario. Imagine two retirees, both starting with $400,000 saved. One is careful, tracks every expense, and avoids daily leaks. The other dismisses small habits as harmless. The careful retiree spends an extra $200 less each month and invests that difference conservatively. After 20 years, their account has $80,000 more than the other retiree. That $80,000 could pay for home care, medical bills, or even just the freedom to live without stress. Meanwhile, the other retiree is scraping by, cutting back, and wondering why their savings didn't last. I've run these projections countless times for clients. The difference is always shocking. People expect wealth to be lost in big chunks, a bad investment, a market crash, a scam. But the truth is, the market usually recovers, scams can be avoided, and big purchases are rare. What truly destroys retirement security is the steady drip of daily spending that compounds quietly until it's too late. The other mistake seniors make is underestimating inflation. That $7 coffee and pastry today will be $10 in 15 years. That $15 takeout meal will be $25. If your income is fixed, but your habits scale with inflation, the math becomes unbearable. A senior who spends $6,000 a year on takeout today might be spending $10,000 a year on the exact same meals in 15 years. Multiply that by the length of retirement, and suddenly you're looking at $200,000 disappearing, often from a nest egg that wasn't very large to begin with. And this is why I say these small choices are anything but small. Every time you choose that daily habit, you're making a trade, your future stability for present convenience. Some trades are worth it. Many aren't. The tragedy is, most people don't realize which side of the line they're on until it's too late. So let me frame it this way. If you're a senior with $400,000 saved, spending an extra $300 a month doesn't feel like much. But over 20 years, that's $72,000 gone. That's nearly 20% of your entire savings. Gone to coffee, snacks, tickets, or takeout. And if you're already withdrawing to cover fixed expenses, that 20% can mean the difference between your money lasting 25 years or running out in 18. That gap matters, especially when your life expectancy might push you beyond 90. I'm not saying seniors should never spend on small joys. Joy matters. Comfort matters. But I'm saying you must see those daily choices for what they are, powerful financial decisions, not harmless habits. Because once you see the numbers, you can no longer pretend they're insignificant. The math is ruthless, but it's also fair. It doesn't judge. It just shows you the truth. And the truth is, daily purchases can quietly bankrupt seniors who otherwise did everything right, worked hard, saved, invested responsibly. That's why I'm shocked, and why I make it my mission to warn people before it's too late. Let's talk about solutions, because pointing out the problem without showing a path forward only leaves people feeling guilty or overwhelmed. And guilt doesn't change behavior. Clarity and small, practical steps do. The good news is that seniors don't have to give up every comfort or joy to protect their retirement. What they do need is structure, awareness, and intentionality. That combination can stop the invisible leaks before they drain the tank dry. The first step is brutally simple but often overlooked. Track your spending. Most retirees I meet think they know what they spend, but when we actually put pen to paper or run a report from their bank account, the numbers don't match their memory. Those few dollars here and there add up quickly, and without tracking, they slip into the shadows. For 1 week, write down every purchase, no matter how small. At the end of the week, add it up. Then project it out over a year. That simple exercise has opened more eyes than any lecture I could give. Seniors often gasp when they see how much their small treats are costing annually. Awareness alone creates the first crack in the habit. The second step is substitution, not elimination. Cutting something entirely feels punishing, and punishment never sticks. But finding lower-cost alternatives preserves joy while protecting wealth. If daily coffee from a cafe is your ritual, consider making it at home 3 or 4 days a week and visiting the cafe only on certain days. That simple swap could cut the cost in half, saving over $25,000 across retirement while still keeping the ritual alive. For takeout, try meal prepping once a week, so reheating a homemade dish is just as convenient as picking up fast food. For lottery tickets, take the money you would have spent and transfer it into a fun fund account. Watching that account grow can become its own reward, and you can use it for something meaningful instead of chasing impossible odds. The third step is creating a joy budget. Instead of ignoring or denying small pleasures, plan for them. If a retiree wants to spend $100 a month on discretionary daily treats, that's fine, but it should be capped and clearly separated from essential expenses. I encourage clients to set up a separate debit card with a fixed monthly amount loaded onto it. When the card is empty, the treats stop until the next month. This removes the emotional tug-of-war and replaces it with simple boundaries. It transforms an unconscious leak into a conscious choice. The fourth step is to visualize the trade-off. Humans are terrible at long-term thinking, but we are great at connecting stories to emotions. So I often ask seniors, would you rather have coffee every day or an extra year of independence in your home before you need outside help? When the trade is framed that way, it suddenly feels real. Or I'll say, this lottery ticket you're holding could have been a prescription refill or a tank of gas. Which one matters more? It sounds harsh, but sometimes seniors need to see the opportunity cost in a tangible way to break through denial. The fifth step is accountability. Changing habits is easier with support. Some seniors track their spending with a spouse. Others check in monthly with their advisor or even a trusted friend. I've seen remarkable progress when seniors share their goals with family members, not because the family polices them, but because it creates gentle pressure to stay consistent. When you know someone else is rooting for you, discipline feels less like sacrifice and more like teamwork. Another strategy I've encouraged is reframing the purchase itself. For example, instead of thinking of coffee as a daily necessity, think of it as a reward. You might say, if I stick to my budget all week, I'll treat myself on Saturday. This shifts the psychology. Instead of entitlement, I deserve this every day, it becomes motivation, I earned this by being disciplined. Small mental shifts like this can have enormous long-term effects. Technology can also help. There are simple budgeting apps that send alerts when you're overspending, or that categorize every dollar spent so you can see exactly where your money is going. Many seniors resist technology at first, but once they realize the app does the math for them, it often becomes a powerful ally. Even a simple bank feature that rounds up purchases and shows monthly summaries can highlight where the leaks are hiding. Now, none of these solutions work without one final element: honesty. Seniors must be willing to admit that habits built over decades are no longer harmless in retirement. Denial is the biggest enemy. I've had clients argue with me over a $5 daily expense, convinced it doesn't matter, even as their accounts drain. But those who can be honest with themselves, who can face the uncomfortable truth, are the ones who make the changes and protect their independence. One client, Elaine, was in her late 60s when we went through this process. She loved eating out. Nearly every day, she'd grab lunch or dinner outside. When we tallied it up, it came to almost $8,000 a year. She was shocked. Instead of eliminating it completely, we set a target of cutting it in half. She started prepping meals at home 3 days a week, saving about $4,000 annually. Over the 25 years she planned to live in retirement, that change alone would preserve $100,000 of her wealth. When she saw that number, she smiled and said, "I just bought myself peace of mind." That's the power of these small adjustments. The goal is never to strip seniors of joy. Retirement should feel free, not constrained. But freedom isn't found in small indulgences that bankrupt the future, it's found in balance. It's about enjoying today while still safeguarding tomorrow. When seniors learn to shift their perspective, track their spending, substitute wisely, and set intentional limits, the invisible leaks lose their power. And here's the most encouraging part: it doesn't take massive changes to make a massive difference. Even cutting just 50% of these daily expenses can add tens of thousands back into a retirement plan. That's the difference between running out of money at 82 or having enough to last until 92. That's the difference between fear and confidence. These are the solutions I wish every senior knew before habits spiral into crises. Because once they understand, they realize they don't have to give up their comforts, they just have to take control of them. And control is the foundation of financial security. One of the hardest parts of my job isn't showing seniors the math. It's helping them overcome the psychological traps that keep them repeating the same habits even after they see the damage. Numbers are black and white, but human behavior is emotional, layered, and often illogical. If you've ever wondered why someone who knows better still does the opposite, the answer usually lies in these mental traps. The first trap is what I call the small money illusion. Seniors look at a $5 or $10 expense and think, that's nothing compared to my savings. They compare the daily purchase to their entire portfolio, not realizing that it's not a one-time purchase, it's a repeating drain. When you frame it as just $5, the brain dismisses it. But when you multiply it out, you see the truth. Those little dollars are termites, slowly eating away at the foundation. And just like termites, you don't notice the damage until it's extensive. The second trap is habit blindness. Many of these purchases have been routines for decades. Morning coffee, lottery tickets, dining out, these aren't decisions anymore, they're automatic. The brain doesn't even register them as spending. They've become background noise. That's why so many clients tell me, I don't spend much, only for us to discover thousands of dollars flowing out on nothing. It's not lying, it's blindness. When something is automatic, it disappears from conscious awareness. The third trap is emotional justification. Retirement can be lonely. It can also feel like a loss of purpose after decades of working. So small indulgences become emotional anchors. Coffee at the cafe is not just caffeine, it's social interaction, a sense of routine, a reminder of being part of something. The lottery ticket isn't just a gamble, it's hope, a tiny spark of excitement in a life that might otherwise feel repetitive. Takeout isn't just food, it's relief from the reminder that you're cooking for one now. When purchases are tied to emotions, they become harder to challenge. To cut them feels like cutting joy, not just cutting costs. The fourth trap is denial fueled by pride. Seniors often tell me, I'm not one of those people who can't manage money. They've worked hard their whole lives, raised families, paid off homes. Admitting that something as small as daily spending is hurting them feels humiliating. Pride makes them minimize the problem. They'd rather pretend it doesn't exist than face the idea that small habits could undo decades of discipline. This denial is powerful and dangerous. The fifth trap is short-term bias. Humans, by nature, value immediate gratification over long-term security. Retirement amplifies this, because many seniors think, I've worked hard. I don't know how long I have left. I deserve this now. And while that sentiment is understandable, it often backfires. Many live far longer than they expect, and by the time they realize it, the money is gone. The bias toward the present robs them of the future. Another subtle trap is anchoring. If someone has been buying coffee for decades, their brain anchors to the belief that this is normal. Even as the cost rises from $1 to $7 over the years, they don't reevaluate the value. They accept it as a fixed part of life. Anchoring keeps people stuck paying more and more for habits that no longer serve them, because they're comparing today's behavior not to their current reality, but to decades of past behavior. Then there's what I call the deserved indulgence trap. Many seniors carry the mindset, I've sacrificed enough. This is my time. And they're right, they do deserve joy and comfort. But the problem comes when deserved indulgence becomes unchecked indulgence. Without boundaries, the daily treats that shouldn't matter pile up into mountains. What was meant as freedom becomes financial imprisonment. One of the deepest traps, though, is fear. Seniors are often afraid to confront the reality of their finances. They worry that if they look too closely, they'll see disaster. So they avoid it. They keep spending, keep ignoring, keep pretending. It's less painful in the moment to stay blind. But blindness doesn't stop the consequences. It just delays them. I've seen seniors who avoided looking at their accounts for years, only to wake up one day and realize the money is nearly gone. That moment of reckoning is brutal, and it's always avoidable. Understanding these traps is crucial, because it explains why simple advice, just cut back, rarely works. If it were that easy, no one would struggle. The problem isn't knowledge, it's psychology. You can't out-argue emotion with math alone. You have to meet the emotion head-on. That's why when I work with seniors, I don't just show them the numbers. I ask questions that go deeper. What does this daily coffee mean to you emotionally? What would it feel like if you couldn't afford to stay in your home anymore? Which matters more, this habit today or your independence tomorrow? These questions aren't about guilt, they're about shifting perspective. They help seniors see the trade-offs in human terms, not just financial ones. Another powerful tool is storytelling. When I share the story of someone like Robert or Margaret, seniors see themselves in the narrative. They realize they're not unique in their habits or their denial. Stories break through defenses in a way spreadsheets never can. When they hear about another retiree losing independence over the same daily habits, the lesson lands in a way math alone can't achieve. Ultimately, the battle against daily financial leaks is fought in the mind first, and in the wallet second. If a senior can recognize these traps, if they can say, "Yes, I fall into habit blindness," or "Yes, I've been using this purchase as emotional comfort," then they have a chance to break free. Awareness is the doorway to change. Without it, no amount of financial planning will stick. And that's why I spend so much time on psychology. Because until seniors understand why they keep making the same choices, they'll keep repeating them, no matter how much the math screams otherwise. The danger isn't the coffee, or the lottery ticket, or the takeout. It's the story we tell ourselves about why it doesn't matter. I want to share some stories of transformation, because it's not enough to point out the dangers and the traps. People need to see what it looks like to turn things around. These aren't fairy tales. These are real seniors who faced the same invisible leaks, the same denial, the same fear, and who managed to reclaim control of their finances, their independence, and their peace of mind. The first story is about Helen. She was 68 when I met her, recently retired after decades as a nurse. She had a pension, Social Security, and a modest savings account, but she was worried that she wouldn't have enough to last. When I reviewed her spending, the culprit was obvious: dining out. Nearly every meal was from a restaurant or fast food place. She wasn't extravagant, but the convenience was costing her nearly $700 a month. When I showed her the math, that this habit could eat $200,000 of her retirement over 25 years, her eyes widened. She admitted she hated cooking for one. It reminded her too much of losing her husband. Instead of shaming her, we reframed it. Together, we came up with a plan. She'd still eat out twice a week, but she'd join a local cooking club for seniors. The group prepared meals together and shared leftovers. Not only did this cut her food bill in half, but it gave her a new circle of friends. The emotional need she was filling with takeout, companionship, was now being met in a healthier, cheaper way. Within a year, she was saving over $4,000 annually. More importantly, she felt proud of herself again. She wasn't slipping. She was in control. Then there's George, a retired machinist. He was 73 and had always played the lottery. Every morning, he'd walk to the corner store and buy scratch-offs. His wife had passed, and this ritual gave him a reason to get out of the house. When his daughter brought him to see me, he admitted he spent about $300 a month on tickets. When I asked him how much he had won over the years, he shrugged. Maybe a few hundred here and there. I did the math. Over 15 years, he had spent more than $50,000 chasing luck. I knew telling him to stop cold turkey wouldn't work. So we created a compromise. Instead of $300, he'd allow himself $50 a month. The rest, $250, he'd put into a dream account. I told him, think of this as your real lottery, except you win every month, guaranteed. At first he laughed. But after a year, he had saved $3,000. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was winning. By year 3, he used part of that account to take his grandchildren to Disney World, something he thought he could never afford. That trip meant more to him than a lifetime of losing tickets ever could. Another story that stands out is of a couple, Sam and Lillian. They were both in their early 70s, living comfortably but nervous about healthcare costs. Their invisible leak was coffee shops. Every morning, they'd stop at the cafe together, spending $12 to $15 a day. Over a month, That was about $400. Over a year, nearly $5,000. They didn't even notice it anymore. It was just part of their routine. When I showed them the math, they resisted at first. It's our time together. We love it. I didn't argue. Instead, I suggested a new ritual: invest in a high-quality espresso machine, buy fresh beans, and make their cafe time at home. They tried it. The savings were immediate, but the surprise was how much they enjoyed making coffee together in their kitchen. It became their new ritual, one they looked forward to just as much as the cafe visits. Over time, the money saved went toward travel. They took 2 trips to Europe over 10 years, paid for entirely by the dollars they no longer spent at coffee shops. What started as a financial adjustment became the highlight of their retirement. These stories prove something important. Cutting daily leaks doesn't mean cutting joy. It means redirecting resources to create bigger, more meaningful joys. It means trading empty rituals for richer ones, trading fleeting indulgences for lasting security. And the transformations aren't just financial, they're emotional. Helen found companionship. George found a sense of winning. Sam and Lillian found a new shared ritual that gave them more adventures. Each of them faced the same initial denial: it's just a little money. And each of them discovered that little money, redirected, became the foundation of something greater. I've seen seniors cry when they realize how much better life feels after making these changes. Not because they miss what they gave up, but because they feel relief. Relief from worry, relief from guilt, relief from the creeping fear that their money won't last. When the leaks are plugged, peace of mind flows in. And here's the best part: these transformations don't require radical sacrifice. No one had to stop enjoying coffee, or meals, or rituals. They just had to shift, substitute, and plan with intention. Small adjustments, multiplied over years, created massive improvements. This is what I want every senior to see. It's not too late. Even if you've been leaking money for years, change is possible. Even if you feel stuck, there are ways to adjust without feeling punished. The goal isn't deprivation, it's empowerment. When seniors take control of their daily spending, they aren't just protecting their money. They're protecting their freedom, their dignity, and their legacy. They're ensuring they can live retirement on their terms, without becoming dependent on children, without sacrificing the experiences that truly matter. These stories are reminders. Daily purchases have the power to bankrupt, but they also have the power to transform, if you redirect them with purpose. Every dollar has a job. You just have to decide if it's working for you or against you. Retirement is fragile. It's built not just on decades of saving and planning, but on the small decisions made every single day after the paychecks stop. I've seen seniors live out their golden years with freedom, joy, and peace of mind. I've also seen others spend their final decades in stress, relying on children, or forced into situations they never wanted. And the difference between those two outcomes often comes down to something that seems too small to matter: daily spending habits. I've shown you how a coffee here, a ticket there, or a takeout meal each night can quietly drain tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, of dollars across a retirement. I've shown you the math, the emotional traps, the heartbreaking stories of those who didn't see it until it was too late. And I've shared the transformations of those who woke up in time, who found ways to redirect small leaks into big victories. The truth is undeniable. Seniors aren't usually ruined by one giant mistake. They're worn down by 1,000 tiny ones they never noticed. But here's the part one want to leave you with: this isn't a message of fear. It's a message of opportunity. Because the same daily habits that can destroy wealth can also build it. The same $200 that disappears every month without thought can, when redirected, buy peace of mind, security, and even joy. The same routines that feel like shackles can be reshaped into choices that empower. It's not about giving up the little things. It's about making sure those little things don't cost you the big things. Imagine what would change if you took control today. Imagine trimming just half of your daily leaks. Maybe that's $100 a month. Maybe it's $300. Over time, that simple choice could add $50,000 or $100,000 back into your retirement plan. That's years of independence. That's medical care when you need it. That's travel with loved ones. That's dignity, freedom, and choice. You've worked too hard to let automatic habits rob you of the retirement you deserve. You sacrificed, you saved, you planned. Don't let the smallest of leaks sink the ship now. You don't have to cut joy. You just have to cut waste. You don't have to stop treating yourself. You just have to start treating your future with equal respect. I've been a wealth advisor for decades, and if there's one lesson I want to leave behind, it's this: retirement security is not won or lost in the markets, or in the big purchases, or even in the financial headlines. It's won or lost in the ordinary, quiet, daily choices. The ones no one talks about. The ones you might think are harmless. The ones you can change, starting today. So ask yourself, what daily purchase is costing me my future? What habit is quietly trading my independence for a fleeting comfort? And most importantly, what small change can I make today to reclaim control tomorrow? Because if you can answer those questions honestly, and act on them, you'll be amazed at the difference it makes. Your retirement doesn't have to be ruled by invisible leaks. It can be ruled by intention, by balance, and by freedom. And when that happens, you don't just preserve your wealth, you preserve your dignity, your choices, and your legacy. That's the retirement you deserve. And it starts not with millions of dollars or perfect timing, but with one simple decision. Stop letting the little things bankrupt the big picture. Take control. Choose wisely. Protect the life you've worked for. Because you only get one retirement, and it should be lived on your terms.